Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just just get rid of that web page there. Hello and welcome to another live reading with me, Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and we are reading a Sussex Peep Show by Walter Wilkinson. Fascinating story. We read the first one yesterday. I hope you managed to catch up if you didn't see us live. Thank you so much for returning today. Hello to everybody here. We've got a whole collection of people. Turbo Stream, lovely Julia, Michael White, Billabong O'Neill, good afternoon from South Holland. Hello to you. John F., Lee Lawson, Nigel Sadler, Morton Lewis. Who else have we got there scanning down? It's kind of it, I think, unless I missed you, unless you've come in a bit later on. People always do. Anyway, and probably other people who are watching as well. Thank you very much. We're on chapter 2 of the book, which is great. And this chapter is called By Bury, Bignor and Petworth. And let's crack on into it because it seems great. I've got a cup of coffee on the go, which I shall have a slurp of. And away we go. We were leaning over the cottage wall, looking down on the level meads and marshes threaded by the gleaming river Arun. The silver ribbon transversed the Weald very carefully by the longest and most intricate route, regardless of morals and business efficiency, winding its way by the tall reeds, the home of the wild duck and snipe, by clumps of trees and open pastures, under bridges, and by quiet villages to the passage through the green hills by Amberley and Arundel. A few miles distant, on the southern side of these reedy marshes, rose the Downs, 20 miles of green rounded contours stretching east and west, bright green hills and dark wooded hills, steep slopes melting into the plain, or the shadowed combes dark with trees. Chanterbury Ring was there, of course, standing out imposingly with its crest of trees. Old Rackham Hill and Amberley Down we could see, the white sheep and the little black people walking. Across the valley through which the Arun flows rose the steep slopes of Arundel Park, with its green acres surmounted by rich woods. And so they ranged on beyond Petworth and Midhurst, hill after hill of bare green pastures, with the great fields billowing up from the Weald into the hanging woods on the steep down sides. Smaller and fainter they grew as they receded into the distance, until they merged with the grey-blue mist of sun and sky into an impossible world of loveliness and poetry. With the help of a map, we were shaping out a route for our travels on the actual country which lay so splendidly before us, when old Buckleridge, the farmer, with side whiskers and gaiters, put down his yoked buckets of water and straightened his back. "Good morning, gentlemen. A grand day." He puffed from his exertions and leaned on the wall too. "Been a lot of changes about here," he said. "I remember when this cottage and that one over there had been, and that one down under the tree there, and lots more of these little farms. There were I remember when this cottage and that one over there and that one down under the tree and lots more were all little farms, enough to support a man and his family. Now there's all let, and the gorse is beginning to grow. There's hundreds of little farms gone like that round here. They were enough to keep a man, but now they seem to pay better with letting. Pity, you know, it is, because it was a good living. They hadn't much money, but they hadn't smart clothes, but they had their own victuals, and plenty of 'em, aye, and home-brewed beer too. Course, they get more money in the town nowadays, but these wages, £2, £2.10, £3 even, won't buy what these people had. They had good food and plenty of it, a roof always over their head, and none such a big rent to pay neither. But people don't want work nowadays. All they thinks about is wages. And when they comes to a stop, where are they? In the soup. Oh, yeah, I forgot he's up north, isn't he? He's Yorkshire. In the soup, said the flippant utility. The sturdy old Buckeridge stood up and looked at him gravely, but not without approval. Aye, they are without substance, he said firmly, and we wondered if he intended to say subsistence, or if he'd been reading his Bible. Been a lot of changes. He seemed to forget us and stared fixedly at the past. A lot of changes. This field we're in was common land not so long ago, and when we used to run around on that piece down there where the golf course is, we didn't know it was a common, and where the green cottages stand, that was common, and where the green, I read that, they made a difference to the old common with that golfing. They spent a lot of money on that game, and don't they use some language too? I watched an old colonel and his son one day. The lad was eager to hit the ball, but he kept missing 'em. He wagged his stick, but he couldn't hit 'em. And then after 4 goes, he weren't as far as his old man got him. What? And he wagged his stick, and he couldn't hit 'em. And after 4 goes, he weren't as far as the old man had got in 1. The old man said something to him, I can tell you. And then he says, "Now, you'll have to stop that. You're holding up the course. But you must let these others pass." And when they were gone by, he didn't half flower up with some language, I can tell you. But the worst language I've ever heard was from 2 ladies when I went over to have a look at a foxhole. They didn't know I was in the gorse under the bank, and just as they came by me, one of the ladies said, well, it was the worst language I've ever heard, and I've heard some, I can tell you, and I knows who they are too. There'd be some people round here surprised if they knew, I'd lay. My missus wouldn't use those words. 'Tis right down vulgar, I call it. I seen 'em in church too, where 'tis to be hoped they pray for forgiveness. The farmer could not help us much with our route, as Midhurst market seemed to be the extent of his travels in the country, and he picked up his buckets, jerking his way down the footpath. From the map we translated our route to the actual country, down the hill to the marshes, along the road to that knot of trees, past that group of houses, and so into the trees standing about Bury, round under the downs to the rising ground where Petworth stands, and so back again to where we were standing. A good week's pushing and showing, we imagined, and seizing the patent barrow, we bumped over the grass to the road. Quick slurk of drink. We've got a few more people here. Hello to Philip Hammond and Fiona. Just to let you know, I was wearing your lovely jumper, Fiona, the other day when it was cold. I love Richard's yokels, says Morton Lewis. I know my yokels are more West Country than Sussex, I'm afraid. I don't really... I haven't got enough to go on to switch into a proper Sussex accent. It's a shame, because I do live down here. But anyway. Pulborough is an extraordinarily long village, poised on a ledge at the foot of the hills just above the flood level of the Arun, which washes against its southern back gardens. And that's very true. That's absolutely spot on. Labourers were digging a trench for water pipes, and as we approached, they seemed to work a little more leisurely. As we passed, each man stopped his work for a moment and studied us acutely. It was the last man who solved the mystery and revealed us to the whole line in that one horrid word, hiking. We walked the one narrow street in imminent danger from the traffic, but by crushing against the walls and halting in the gutter ignominiously, ignominiously. We arrived safely in a wider road without impairing the funds of any insurance companies. As he described that, I was just trying to imagine going along from where they were to Pulborough, just trying to work out which way they're going. Presumably they're going... Where did they come from? They came down from Rudgwick, didn't they? And then they went to Wisborough Green. I'm just trying to work out whether they were going north-east or east-north. If they're going towards Petworth, they must be going from the west... east to west. And I know that road very well. I've driven across that road that he's talking about, and how crushing. And without pavements in 1920, whatever it was, 21. When was this first published? Hang on, I need to have a look. 1933. I can imagine what it must have been like. Ignominious. Oh, yes, ignominiously. Thank you very much. Yes. Going to Pulborough tomorrow, says Linda Kane. You be careful you don't get crushed by all that traffic. It was a bald road that cut straight over the flats, leading us towards the downs, so devoid of adventure that we stopped to inspect the church at Hardham. Oh, they're on the A29. That's where they are. A miniature Norman structure altered in later days, as the guidebooks will tell you. I've made a video there with Mr. Snow. The old stony barn, beautifully simple, all faded wall paintings and honest oak pews, cut us off very effectively from the boredom of the road and carried us a little coldly and eerily into the atmosphere of the Sussex forefathers. He's going south, yes. He's going the wrong way for Petworth, which is a bit odd. After this road turned and dipped and rose again, and what? After this, the road turned and dipped and rose again, was altogether more sportive, and took us through Coldwartham. Oh yeah. And by Tudor cottages with wrapped timbers that threw the buildings into the queerest of angles. There was a long hill under the trees to Watersfield. Oh, yes, because they're heading down towards Bury, that's right. Oh, I see. So they didn't... That's interesting, because the way he's described that, I thought he was coming from the West Chiltington area and going across, because he described that long road, but he was obviously on the A29 coming south through it. That's interesting. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just trying to work it out in my head. So when you know somewhere, it makes it so much more fascinating when the writer is telling you, especially as it's what are we talking about, 90 years ago. There was a long hill under the trees to Watersfield, and then the wicked road ran off to Worthing. Where the hell was that then? The long hill under the trees to Watersfield. Well, Watersfield is back from Berry Hill. Where would be that turning? You're following it. Nigel Sadler says following it on the map. Yeah, where the hell would that turning be then to Worthing from Watersfield? Is he going... He's not going through Fittleworth, is he? Oh, is he? I'm having a job to follow his route too, says Lee Lawson. Yeah, that's interesting, because he's got to cross the Arun somewhere else. Where the hell would he cross the Arun, if not at Houghton? That's about the next place down that you would cross the Arun, so I don't understand that. Anyway, we turned away from the stream of cars, passing into quieter ways, to the real dignified country with hawthorn blossoms in the hedges. Oh, so he's going in May then. The blue and gold and white of wild flowers in the ditches, and the feeling of abounding freedom and loveliness over everything. We paused at every gate to see the wind coursing over the long hay grass, or to look along the Weald and to admire the steep escarpments of the downs, receding one behind the other as they rose sharply and boldly from the plain. It was a quiet country between the hills and the busy main roads, a large area which seemed to be inhabited only by a solitary farm labourer far away in the fields. There's a map on the inside of the book. You're quite right. There is a map on the inside of the book. Let's have a look at the map on the inside of the book. Hang on a minute. It's intriguing, isn't it? Hang on. I'll get this camera up as well so you can see the map inside the book. So, he is... Oh, yes. He was started in Rudgwick. Oops. Here. He's gone down to Wisborough Green. He's come through Pulborough. Yes, he would have... There's Fittleworth. That's right. Bignor is over here. He's somewhere down here. Oh, he must have crossed at... He must have talked about the road at Gretham. How is it? Gretham. Sorry, it's not very focused. I wish it would focus. Come on. It doesn't like... There we go. Storrington. He's got... That's an interesting route. He's got Pulborough. Oh, that... Well, it's not on that road. Burtham. Amberley. That doesn't look right. Perhaps there's roads there. That doesn't... That's interesting, because down to Storrington, you go past... what's the name? Parham. You go past Parham Park. Mare Hill. Pulborough. And you turn left at Gretham. Yes, that is right. West Burton, Amberley. So the A20, I can't work this out. The A29, Bignor there. Yeah, that must be the A29 to Whiteway. Oh, interesting. So up Berry Hill is not on his map. I've nearly shut the book up then. Right, the map. Left, first turn it right, over the Dog and Partridge, then the pub on the third. Turning on the right. Yes, thanks. Not really. Not all the roads are marked on that map, naturally. I think he makes it up as he writes, says Lee Lawson. Yes. Anyway, it's just fascinating to look it up, isn't it? See if any of it is true, because I don't suppose he thought for a minute that people would be on the internet reading it 90 years later and criticising his map reading, his map drawing. Now I've lost my space, of course. We paused at every gate, winding through down the receding things. It was a quiet country between the hills and the busy main roads, a large area which seemed to be inhabited by a solitary farm labourer far away in the fields. We looked at the skies and wondered how long it would be before those loose-looking clouds maliciously pelted us with rain. But we were in a careless mood, and who were we to be disturbed by rain when everything was so calm and beautiful, and where the lavish hand of nature threw out the flowers and the grasses, the trees and the promise of fruit in such careless profusion? Who were we to grumble at the inconvenience of a little rain when so many little blue speedwells in a perfection of fragile beauty were wilting away their very lives? He's about to turn right onto the Bignor Road, says Linda Kane. Yes, I think you're right. We loitered by a farm, amused with the herd of seated cows that chewed the cud so lazily and philosophically that we easily caught the mood. All the cows turned their eyes upon us and chewed slow, rolling, contented chews. We were amused with their different expressions and began to discover astonishing likeness. The red one with the humorous face was Mr. Baldwin. Another, with intense eyes, was obviously the Prime Minister, looking as if it was a little disappointing job for a politician to try his hand at reforming a wicked world. A black and white creature took her eyes from us to cough, and when she looked again, we could see that it was Mr. George Roby, not in the best of health. Literature was represented too, the more thoughtful kind, and we could see Mr. Beryl and Mr. Chesterton chewing a reflective cud over their exercises. They were not in the least ashamed of being there. They simply stared at us and chewed, and we wondered if we'd hit on some queer fact of reincarnation. It is said that the spirit leaves the body during sleep and retires to some mysterious and refreshing deeps. Could it be that all our changing moods and queer inspirations were consequent upon some such trick of the spirit, and that even during life we wander off sometimes to inhabit other beings? "You are an ass," said the utility, which only made me feel more than ever that there was something in the idea. We looked into the farmyard and were fascinated by some ducks that swam up and down the stream, lost themselves, waddled in the long grass and swam again, and seemed to have nothing to do but keep up a very expressive conversation in a variety of quackings. Then it was the chickens and guinea fowl and the scolding geese and a furious old speckled cock that stalked towards us angrily and crowd a challenge into our very faces. The farm was like a play to us, and we spent a valuable half-hour leaning over its gates, looking into the beauty of the green, watery meadows and the old large trees that grew so magnificently in this retired farm beneath the downs. Isn't that funny? People with more time on their hands in that idyllic period that they're describing can create such whimsy from what most people today would just not even look at. I just find that fascinating. The road wandered on, carrying us easily and delightfully by the bits of woods and the meadows. It was the Sussex lane buried beneath high hedges, charming entirely with a wreath of flowers among the myriad of grasses. In West Burton, our thoughts turned to business, and we cast a professional eye over the hamlet, stretching out our senses to catch some inspiration to give a performance. But in West Burton we felt shut out by the large, handsome farms and their high walls, each seeming to be a closed community in itself. Now that's the most peculiar thing, because I was mentioning that sort of being shut out from a village in my earlier podcast, The Naked Englishman, that I give to my patrons, and I was expressing exactly that sentiment, how going into a village in this day and age you feel like you shouldn't be there. And that's fascinating that he was having the same thing. Berry Hill Farm, I suspect, says Nigel Sadler. Yes, interesting. There was only one man to be seen, a bucolic figure with turned-down felt hat, corduroys, and leather pads over his knees. He was at the top of a ladder thatching a roof, and we watched him laying the straw lovingly, pressing it firmly and raking it out vigorously with his large fingers. There was plenty of thatch in West Burton, but almost alarmingly smart boards announcing interior decorations by somebody or electric installation by somebody else, and we could only feel that its inhabitants were of that kind who might enjoy a puppet show in the city, but when in the country would be too busy with the electric lighting, the cars and the central heating, or wondering why the stores had not been sent down to food. So you've got to keep remembering that this is in the 30s. So we're just at the end of the real rural folk thing, and we've got the beginning of the city dwellers moving into the country and changing what a village life was really about. We came away from the hamlet without making the least contact and taking the road running parallel with the very near downs, and made our way towards Bignor. The remains of the Roman villa before the village seduced us from the road, and we walked between the mangolds and the cabbages to a collection of little huts where the noble villa once stood. I was there yesterday filming, and that'll be tomorrow's video. And where he said he walked up with the mangolds is now a vineyard, curiously enough. And it's interesting, I didn't mention this in the video that I was doing, but of course the villa probably, with the Romans, probably were having a vineyard, growing grapes. So that's interesting that, you know, what are we talking about? 2,000 years ago, that they were growing grapes and now growing grapes. But 90 years ago, it was mangolds. Knowing nothing of of Roman villas, it was very easy to imagine what a magnificent house this must have been. Its buildings covered a space 200 yards by 100 and set on this rising ground under the wooded downs. The downs are still wooded there. The Roman occupation suddenly seemed very near, and a strangely elegant apparition it must have been in the Sussex of nearly 2,000 years ago. We paid away 36 of our hard-worn pennies to see the show, and grumbled at what seemed to be an immense charge when we considered what could be seen in the way of antiquities for nothing. Whole abbeys, for instance, or museums chock full of Roman remains. But here was something on its original site, and there was a special thrill in walking with the Roman spirits. We gazed at the remnants of mosaic pavements, trying to bring up our thoughts to the impressive moment, but to one of us at least, about the only familiar ancient Roman was Herodotus, Horatius. Horatius, is it Horatius? Who kept the bridge, and our imagination insisted upon habiting the patrician villa with a burly pleb. Oh. And then there appeared one of those learned persons who knows everything, who said in a loud brazen voice, "Oh yes, this is the atrium," and it seemed to us that the spirits of the departed Romans fled at once, snubbed and belittled. But they returned a little later when the guide exhibited the hot air pipes with which the villa had been heated. This was new information for the learned lady, and very aggrieved she looked that the ancient Romans should spring this surprise on her. We were not allowed to camp, as we wished, on the pleasant site of the Roman villa, and we moved on to the village of Bignor to give a performance, of course. We knocked at a farmhouse to ask for a pitch, but found only a small boy, who immediately joined himself to us. We wandered round the village collecting one more small boy and a smaller girl, knocked at another deserted farm, and drank ginger beer at the oldest cottage in Sussex. I'm assuming that this is the yeoman's house, which will appear in my video tomorrow. A ravishing old fairy tale house of overhanging bedrooms and jutting wings, built of timber, flints, stone and plaster, with its old oak doors inside and bobbins to pull and latches to lift. 15th century oak timber-framed house with herringbone brick and flint and plaster. Filmed it yesterday, edited it this morning, looks amazing. Stane Street Roman Road runs nearly according to my map. That's correct, yes, it is adjacent to it. Unfortunately, I didn't get to it on my walk yesterday. I'm going to have to do a separate Roman walk, I think. But I'm sure that's the yeoman's house, which was at that time known as the old grocer's, or the old shop. What has he called it? Just the oldest cottage in Sussex. Which isn't true. I don't think that's the oldest cottage in Sussex by any means. As the evening was yet young, we were not courageous enough to perform just to 3 small children. So we foolishly set out for Sutton, tramped a heavy hill in a thundery atmosphere, and spent so much time in finding a camp that the performance was impossible. We set up the tent in a gloomy meadow, deserted, thistled and nettled. The sullen clouds gathered in congested anger, and we retired from the large drops of rain into the little tent to find ourselves remarkably comfortable as soon as we were shut away from the infernal-looking storm. The night was wet and gusty. The wind moaned in the trees. The owl screamed horribly, and all night a bull roared disconsolately. That's not quite right, is it? Disconsolately, and so loudly that he seemed to be in our meadow, an uncomfortable thought which made us, now and again, unlace the tent and look out into the impenetrable and darkly splashing world of the night. A heavy, melancholy night, and we awoke to a dismal, wet morning and a sodden field about us. There was nothing to do but stick to our tent, and we sat ridiculously side by side, clinging to our tiny patch of dry ground, separated from a floody world by a cover which was nothing more than a large cotton handkerchief. But it sufficed to shelter us while we read aloud from War and Peace, and forgot the weather in that vivid and immense work, until late in the afternoon the rain lifted, and we were able to replenish our depleted stores and to climb Burton Down, where, standing on the grassy Stane Street among the sheep with the gentle melancholy of their bells, we looked northwards over a vast grey and green country under the low, wet sky, and southwards to the intricate coastline and the gleaming waters about Selsey Bill. Can you see Selsey Bill from up there? I think you'd be lucky, wouldn't you, to see Selsey Bill? In the grey morning, we continued the round and set out for Petworth. They certainly have gone a very circuitous route to get to Petworth, seeing as they were in Pulborough, and they haven't done a show. But they did see the Roman villa. Just going to pause there, see how it's going with you guys. One of the most photographed cottage in the west of the country is that, yes. And I went there, and it looked dead. It looked dead, the yeoman's house. I mean, you'd think that if it was the most photographed, they could have I know it's a private house and it must cost millions to live there, but you think that there might be a little information board or something. Sorry, my eye is causing me a bit of jip. What else have we got? Apparently the yeoman's house is a B&B, says Nigel Sadler. Is it really? Blimey. Well, it would be great to stay there and do a video, wouldn't it? And you can spend the night, and the bull will charge later. Yeah, great. Thanks, Michael. Did we see you wearing your jumper? Says Philip. Oh, we did see you wearing a jumper. Oh, great. 5-star, sleep 6. Oh, £900 for 2 nights? Fudge cakes. That's 450. So when you say it's a B&B, you get the whole plate. No wonder it looked empty. There was nobody living in it. Jeepers. That is outrageous. £900 for 2 nights. God, blimey. That is a shocker, that is. That is a shocker. In the grey morning... Oh, wait a minute. Have I read that? Oh, yeah. In the grey morning, we continued the round and set out for Petworth, an intriguing town which we never reached. After the charming cottages of Byworth, oh yes, know that well, I've made a video through there, we ascended to the main road and caught a glimpse of Petworth on its hill, its grey stones illuminated brightly and vividly against a black sky in the storm light. Then the wind blew and the rain swept across the sea and the downs, a wind in which no Punch and Judy show could live. And, as we sat on mowing machines in a farm shed eating our lunch, we gave up our last hope of pennies in Petworth, allowing our minds to contemplate the more comfortable camp at the end of our circular tour. A farm labourer was sorry for us as we set out through the downpour, and we confessed to him that we had tramped for 4 days without collecting a single stiver. He expressed his contempt for Punch and Judy, showing very He expressed his contempt for Punch and Judy, showing very heartily, and advised us to get something else to do. Oh, I see, yeah. It's what I get. Get a proper job. Only the other day somebody told me to do that. We must have presented a very blackguardly appearance to him, for he recommended us to get some indecent photographs to sell as we went along, or better still, we might obtain situations as butlers, ascertain the amount of silver in the house, and then, one dark night, ... The rest he left to our imaginations, very artistically. I love that. He recommended us to get some indecent photographs. Here, love, like to watch a little... got some photographs here, what the butler saw, know what I mean? Have a little gander. I can sell you 5 of them for £1. How extraordinary. Nigel Sadler says it's fully booked too, £900. Bloody hell. Generally about £1,000 a week you pay for nearly a week if you stay for less than 7 nights. Jeepers creepers. Only £150 for 2 nights then. Each. Blimey. It's a lot of money, isn't it, to stay in Bignor when there's no Starbucks or McDonald's on the corner. What will you do? Dear, oh dear. Anyway, where were we? Yes, getting the dodgy old photographs. We thanked him for his useful advice and trudged our way in the rain, resting only at Stopham to take off our wet coats for a time and to admire the grey old building, very vivid in its antiquity, with so many brasses to the memory of generations of the Bartolot family. And I interviewed, I can't remember his name, Charles, was it Charles Bartolot? One of the Bartolots, in the very church where all those brasses are that he talks about. How funny. That's our Bald Explorer. Thank you. That's a Bald Explorer video out there, if you put Stopham Church. Exceedingly wet, we arrived at the point from where a few days before we had looked out on that splendid but treacherous vision of Downs and Weald. There was nothing to see now but a wall of mist and rain, and another sort of vision altogether of the 4 days which we had tramped so completely unsuccessfully from the business point of view. We had lived, worked hard, and been lazy, penetrated into an unspoiled corner of Sussex, made acquaintance with the Romans, and climbed the Downs without having done the least harm to any man. And that brings us to chapter 3, which we have a few more minutes to do it. Are you sure it's the yeoman's cottage and not an earl? Exactly. Under the carpet, which can be lifted. That's true. We did. I think I can't remember now if he rolled up the carpet to look at some of them. Anyway, good to get away from Starbucks. Exactly. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So this is chapter 3, in the heart of the Downs. I dare say we won't get through all of this. But you never know. Sitting on the curbstone, our feet in the gutter, we were looking disconsolately. Why can't I say that word? Disconsolately at the village of Storrington. It's gone to Storrington from Bignor. How did you do that then? Just bear with me. It's gone to Storrington from Bignor. So, well, that's a bit odd, isn't it? He must have gone through... How did he get through there then? He's gone back past Amberley, West Burton. Yeah, there we go. Bignor, West Burton, Amberley, down across from Amberley to Storrington. Interesting. And from Stopham. Why the hell? That's most peculiar. Why the hell didn't he just? I mean, they weren't that far. They was just as far from Storrington as they would have been from Petworth. Probably Petworth was closer, I would have thought, at Stopham. I mean, it's only most bizarre. It's only what from Stopham? It can only be 5 miles. Less, maybe. I mean, and he said that they were in Byworth, which is again. Back up the road to Coldwarth and then over Gretton Bridge. From Stopham to Storrington. No, they would have gone through... From Stopham, he would have just gone through Pulborough. Wouldn't he? From Pulborough down to past Parham House on that road. And... I mean, they could have... because they would have had to get to Gretton Bridge. They'd have to go back down towards Hardham again. Because they'd gone to Stopham. Stopham's on the road to Petworth. Stopham Church is my favourite video of yours, says Michael White. Oh, thank you very much. He was a very nice chap, Lord, whatever his name is. Anyway, we were sitting on the curbstone, there we were, just looking at the village of Storrington, into which we had just pulled for the purpose of performing. Nigel Sadler says, I was travelling from Bignor. Yes, of course, from Bignor. But he was in Stopham, wasn't he? Getting out of the rain just a second ago. There is a neat little square there. There is, it's true. Inviting for our purpose. But I wonder what the cars were like back then in Storrington. There's a neat little square there, inviting for our purpose, but carelessly we had picked on the earlier closing day to find the Storrington shops closed, the streets empty, and all the population gone off for a half day. So we sat, he's not having much success, this bloke. We sat in the triangular square under the shuttered ironmonger's windows, watching the stream of traffic, a constant hurrying, panting procession of cars that rushed around the corner, shook the little square with 1,000 vibrations and disappeared out of the village without a thought about it. How extraordinary that 90 years ago, that the same bloody traffic in Storrington is still there. My goodness. And how fascinating, too, that I did a video in Storrington. Sorry, today's been a bit interrupted on the reading. It's only because we know the area. But I did a video in the height of COVID, in the lockdown, probably one of the few days that you could ever walk through Storrington without taking in the fumes of motor cars since motor cars were invented. It seems ridiculous, doesn't it? Anyway, we were not so fortunate as the showmen of other days. According to the quotation from the country paper of the 18th century, which Mr. E.V. Lucas, and I've got this book, gives us in his charming Highways and Byways of Sussex, which I do have in the other room. The very lovely Lee Lawson gave me a copy of that. This is the age, runs the cutting, of sights and polite entertainment in the country as well as the city. The little town of Storrington has lately been visited by a company of comedians, a mountebank doctor, and a puppet show. One day, the doctor's jack pudding, finding a shilling come in, but slowly... One day the doctor's jack pudding, finding the shillings come in but slowly, exclaimed to his master, "Gad, sir, it's not worth our while to stay here any longer. Players have all got the gold. We all the silver, and Punch all the copper. So, like sagacious locus... What's that word? Sagacious? Like, whatever, locusts, let us migrate from the place we helped to impoverish. It was not until we hit upon the idea of migrating to a romantic camp, possibly on the very side of the downs, that life seemed at all possible, and we took the road towards the hills, which a new adventure before us, almost pleased to escape the noisy squeaking and the impoverishment of Storrington on that very fine evening. The Green Hills. Oh, I wonder if they're going up to, what's the farm up the road from Storrington? Sullington. Are they going up to Sullington? Oh, they're going out towards Burton. Okay. Going out to Burton, blimey. It's amazing, if you were walking, it'd take you a lot longer to do these walks, mind you. I suppose they're used to walking with their, tramping with their funny cart. Anyway, the Green Hills soon loomed large and near over the hedges, and getting our buckets filled with rainwater from a cottage, we moved on, dripping water all the way, prepared for a wild pitch for the night. We came to those large undulating meadows at the base of the down, ploughlands and fields of young corn springing, and some of the folded sheep baaing lustily into the great air. A lane took us from the tarred road, the farms and civilization generally, and we stumbled over the roughage and under the tall nut bushes, which presently gave way to grass hummocks like a miniature range of hills. Here the track before us steepened ominously, and we halted, sitting among the buttercups and speedwells, casting a calculating eye over the steep road, and the almost perpendicular side of the down looming silently over us. That steep bank jutted out obstinately, as if throwing out a challenge to us, daring us to do anything so crazy as to pull a Punch and Judy show to its exalted crest. Sagacious. Thank you. As soon as I saw that, I knew exactly what you meant. Sagacious. We set ourselves to the task to mount that hill a little, at all events, and sleep a little nearer the gods, and after a heated tussle and much slipping, we found ourselves panting round the first steep corner. Then the road went on at an easier gradient, and so did we, not ceasing to pull steadfastly until the barrow stood on the hilltop, resting under the weathered old signpost, pointing a shaking hand southward over the hills to Burton. I wonder where the hell they are then. Where are they now? Mountbank Doctor, oh yes. Mountebank Doctor. There are 2 lanes he could have taken southwards of Storrington, Greyfriars Lane or Chantry Lane, most likely Greyfriars. Well, if they were in Storrington, I can't remember which is the one that takes you up to Sullington. There's a lovely walk, I know the walk eastwards that goes up towards Washington from Sullington, because I did that recently and made a video. Just crossing the South Downs Way at this point. Yes, and I know the Chantry Post, the Chantry Lane up to Chantry Post, close to where the tank was on the Downs. That won't be there yet. They've yet to have the war. So that's interesting. I see. I can see where they are. We'll get there in a minute. A sheltered bay among the bushes invited comfortable camping, and we set the tent, laying our beds over the thick grass and the fragrant thyme. From the tent door, across the edge of the down, we looked out to the Weald, over all the trees and woods of Sussex, the great plain receding into the misty line of the North Downs. Nothing disturbed the immense serenity. We were in the heavens, looking down on a toy miniature world that was all beauty and light and colour, a world loveliness in which all men might live, had they but the good taste to embrace it. Behind us, some house roofs showed over a tract of chalky ploughland, and we set off from the farm with the cheerful idea of acquiring fresh milk and new-laid eggs. But it was only a sheep corral, and some barns. I was going to say, up there are no houses, as far as I know, but there might be a sheep corral and some barns. And we returned to the tent empty-handed, without encountering a living thing. You would be. We were alone on the darkening downs, in an infinite solitude, hugely quiet, until presently a small white dog came trotting down the path from Kitson Hill. So Kitson Hill, that's along a bit, isn't it? Never did the dog seem more human, and we fastened on him with the intensiest interest, watching him stop occasionally to sniff for his direction. He picked up our scent, trotting towards us hopefully, but after looking at us wistfully, he turned his back, lifted his head, and howled, the long, mournful howl of a lost creature. He took no comfort from our honeyed words, but set off at once more on his long trot, nose to the ground, in search of his master. With the terrier's disappearance, we were more alone than ever, but elated and pleased, and very sure that we had done the right thing in pulling our show to these heights, as far away as possible from all chance of exhibiting it. We watched the golden points of lamplight spring out among the trees on the plain, and in the heavens we saw the silent gatherings of the stars, until, with hardly a sense of the passage of time, but infinitely refreshed, we found that morning had come. Probably Kithurst, where the tank was. Yes, Kithurst. He says it was. He just said it was the path from Kitson Hill. Yes, Kithurst. It must be, mustn't it? Just looking to see how far. We haven't really got much. I want to go on, but we're 10 to the hour, and there's a good place to stop. We watched the golden points of lamplight spring out among the trees on the plain, and in the heavens we saw the silent gathering of the stars, until, with hardly a sense of the passage of time, but infinitely refreshed, we found that the morning had come. What will befall them in the morning? Where will they go? Will they get to do... They've only done one... In all of this, they've only done one Punch and Judy show. Well, they did several shows at one venue in at the wherever the fairground was at Wisborough Green. I can't find Kitson. No, I'm wondering if it's Kithurst, as it's known now. And maybe they misheard or misremembered what it was called. Kithurst Hill, yeah. Because as soon as I read Kitson, in my head I went, oh, Kithurst is... which is where the tank on the Downs was, but it's apparently that's gone. How fascinating to follow that when you know the area, and how it pulls out your memory. That's really interesting. What a great book to read. Thank you very much. I think it was it Nigel? You said that it was one of your mother's old books. Brilliant book. I went to look to see if any of the other books were available, and the first book he wrote, A Peep Show, was about 25 quid or something. Too expensive for me to purchase at the moment. Gone to France. Oh, what, the tank? Has it gone to France? Bloody hell, that's a bit much, isn't it? Interesting following on the map. I camped at Graffham with Mum and Dad in the 70s. Oh, well, that's not too far away, down at Graffham. Just close to Burton, isn't it? Burton Mill, and all round that neck of the woods, and Dunkton and all that. Presently, that's an archaic... presently, that's an archaic adverb now. I like presently, and presently we came to such and such. Why is that archaic? Is it just because nobody uses it? That's bloody cheek, isn't it? I read that a lot. I guess that's because I read a lot of old books. Are you returning the book to Nigel? Says Linda Kane. No, definitely not. I'm keeping it. There is a very good campsite for camper vans at Graffham now, I'm told, says Lee Lawson. Is there? Silent gatherings of the stars, says Morton Lewis. There's some beautiful language, isn't there? He's a very, very good writer, if his geography is somewhat out. I'm intrigued by the route from Hardham to Worthing, but or from Coldwartham to, well, it's near enough at Harding, isn't it? Hardham. The campsite is still there, says Turbo Stream. Oh, how exciting. Well, there we go. That was interesting. Back again tomorrow with the third part. Thoroughly enjoying it. I'm slightly concerned because we're what are we, a sixth through the book. We need to be thinking we need to be thinking of the next one. So that would be good. I'm loving these travelling books. I have a second one if you needed to have one, but obviously you have. Oh yes, thank you very much, Linda. I very much appreciate that. Golden points of lamplight. Yes. Marvellous turns of phrases. Beautiful. I'm still reeling backwards from gobules of, I can't remember what it was, gobules of light or gobules of sound that he was referring to in the first chapter. But I love gobules. I think it's such a great word. Anyway, there we are. Thank you so much for joining me. No show tonight. I get a bit of time off. And I've got to make some bread, light the oven and various things. So busy with that. But absolutely find it really, really enjoying these readings, and I just wish I could turn more of these books into videos. One could follow his route, which would, if I'd have known, that's the thing, isn't it? If you knew that, you could follow the route that he takes, even if you follow on in a car, and try and look for these places. It's that would be quite fun. But sadly, I've only got a couple of days, and then Julia and I are off on a narrowboat trip, and but because I won't be doing any reading during the week. But anyway, another lovely reading. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. That's given me some ideas. Maybe I can do tomorrow. The weather is going to be shite, but maybe I can go on a bit of a trek round and see if we can follow some of his places. I don't know. See how it goes. Anyway, take care. Thank you, Anne H. and Michael White and Gobulicious. Definitely, Gobulicious. Anyway, take care. Thank you very much. Do give us a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. And I'll see you tomorrow with more of the same. Until then, arrivederci and goodbye. Goodbye.